All right, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is John Connolly. I'm one of the course directors for the MSc in Regenerative Medicine. And along with my colleague, Kristen Brown, we lead this master's degree program. So today we've got a bit of program update and question and answer session. And this is primarily targeted at you guys who are either offer holders or prospective students. So this will be an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the program, although you might already have some idea of what's involved. But it's also a good opportunity for you to ask questions that you might have about the structure and how things are going to run in the upcoming academic year. So what I'll do is I'll give a quick introduction to the program. Again, this is maybe information that you already know, and a few updates on kind of recent developments here at Queen Mary and our plans for teaching in the autumn. And then we'll open it up at that point to questions from students. So as we're going along, if you do have questions, feel free to pop those in the chat as you think about them, and then I'll address them at the end. Or if you want to wait till the end and raise your hand, and you can ask your question live. So it's important to be aware that this session will be recorded, and we will remove any kind of identifying names from that afterwards. So in case you have any concerns about being recorded, but we are recording this session and just thought I would let you guys know before we get started. Okay, great. So, kicking things off, first off, what is regenerative medicine? So many of you may be well familiar of what the field is all about, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we often think of regenerative medicine as the use of cellular or biological components to regenerate or repair damaged tissues and organs. And here the key thing is the use of the cellular and biological components. So rather than using small molecule drugs or synthetic implants, here we're using living cellular components. And really the aim is to try to restore cell, tissue, and organ function. So rather than treating the symptoms, what we're looking for here is really a cure. And the field of regenerative medicine has developed a lot over the last 10 to 20 years. And currently it's a very interdisciplinary subject, and it involves basic research on things such as stem cell biology, as well as more materials and engineering to try to develop scaffolds to help promote tissue repair and regeneration. And then at the same time, there's a strong clinical component in trying to take these basic science and engineering technologies into the clinic and actually deliver benefits to the patient. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, and therefore it's a highly interdisciplinary program. And so the program here at Queen Mary reflects that interdisciplinarity. So for those of you who may not be familiar, just to recap, it is a one-year full-time program. And again, this interdisciplinarity is reflected in how we deliver it. And so it's co-taught between both the School of Medicine and Dentistry and the School of Engineering. So you get both of those aspects of medicine and engineering. And the program is structured into 8 taught modules, which consist of or make up 120 credits, and then a final dissertation research project, which is an additional 60 credits. So just to quickly run through the modules that are available on this course, in semester 1, so running kind of September through December, the modules here include the molecular and cellular basis of regeneration, stem cell and developmental biology, a module on research skills and methodology, and then one of our co-delivered modules on tissue engineering, and this is taught by the School of Engineering and Material Science. So these 4 modules are all core, so everybody takes these in the first semester. And then in the second semester, there are 5 modules available, and the students can choose 4 out of 5 of these, so a little bit more flexibility and choice. And in the second semester, we go into a little bit more specific concepts. And the modules here include ethics and regulatory affairs, biomaterials and regenerative medicine, tissue-specific stem cells, induced pluripotent stem cells and genome engineering, and then finally a module on neurodegenerative diseases. So each of these, again, is 15 credits, and you would choose 4 out of the 5 of these. And then finally, in semester 3, so starting around early May, the students carry out their thesis research project. And so this is a 12-week research project where the students are working full-time in the lab. So it's primarily a wet lab based project. And this can be on a wide range of topics. And so the way that we work the research projects is that early on in the year, kind of October time, we'll distribute a list of topics, and these can include things such as basic stem cell biology, or investigation into disease mechanisms, or even more applied topics of kind of tissue engineering, biomaterial development, or even clinical associated projects. So the students will have the first semester to look through these project descriptions, even meet the supervisors to discuss. And then at the end of the first semester, the students submit their top 5 project choices. And then early on in semester 2, what we try to do is match up students with one of their preferred project choices. And so this gives the students a fair amount of choice and selection in choosing a project that's aligned with their own interests. And then over the course of the second semester, the students can do any sort of background reading or meeting with supervisors to kind of get ready for the project. And then the work in the lab will actually begin in the first week of May. And this is culminated in the submission of a dissertation, and that's submitted at the end of August. And so that's one of the primary modes of evaluation and assessment for the research project. So a lot has been changing over the past year with the COVID pandemic and changes to the way that we teach and the way that students learn. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to just kind of update you on some recent developments here. So first off, we're pleased to say that the campus is now open fully for on-site teaching and research. And our current master's students are working in the labs on their thesis projects. So these students started at the beginning of May, and thanks to some of the safety precautions and the COVID secure safety measures that have been put in place within the university, the students are able to work in the labs as they normally would. And so we're quite hopeful that this will continue for next year as well. At the moment, we're putting together our curriculum for the upcoming year, and I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of my talk about how we're going to structure that. But we are very much looking forward to having students back on campus and being able to teach to some extent in person. Also wanted to highlight some of the research updates or progress that's been going on, and in particular this one study from Professor Silvia Marino. So Professor Marino is one of the lecturers on the course, and her expertise is in stem cells within the brain, and in particular cancer stem cells, which give rise to glioblastoma. So Professor Marino had a nice study that came out just last month, and this was looking at how metabolism changes in progenitor cells that drive a particular form of brain cancer called medulloblastoma. And what her group was able to show is that use of this chemical inositol can help alter the metabolic processes, and actually, when combined with chemotherapy, is quite effective at killing and shrinking medulloblastoma growth. So this is just an example of a recent research advance that's come up related to regenerative medicine. Okay, and then, as I mentioned before, teaching plans for the autumn. So our plan at the moment is that teaching in the autumn will be what we call a blended model. You may be familiar with this from your own learning over the past year, but it has 2 components. So first, there's an independent learning. And so this might involve reading or listening to recorded lectures or kind of basic material. And the students would do this in their own time, whenever is convenient and works best for them. And so a lot of this independent learning would be done prior to meeting in person. And then when we do meet in person, these will be on-site, on campus, and in small group tutorials. And here we'll be building upon the kind of basic material that was introduced in the reading or recorded lectures. And it will include things such as group discussions, question and answers, and some problem solving exercises. And this is really to develop kind of a deeper level of understanding of the material and critical analysis skills. It's important to note that because we are an international university and we have students from all over the world, some students may not be able to travel to the UK in September, depending on the restrictions, travel restrictions in their own or their home country. So if this is the case, those students will be able to carry out their studies remotely by performing the independent learning, and the on-site tutorials and discussions will be recorded. So they will be able to keep up with their studies so that when they can travel to the UK, they can pick up where they left off. And then, as I mentioned before, the current students are working full-time in the lab on their thesis projects. And we're quite hopeful that this will continue next year as well, when next year's cohort starts their thesis projects. Of course, as we've learned over the past year, things can change. So if for whatever reason the pandemic comes back or things change and we need to tighten our restrictions, we would still follow some of the same model, but just supplement the on-site with online teaching. Hopefully this won't be the case, as we get the vaccines rolled out and the case numbers go down, we'll be able to teach on-site safely. But this is the current plan for the autumn, and we're quite happy that we'll be able to teach more in person this year. Okay, so that's all I have for kind of updates and brief overviews. I wanted to keep it quite short today so that we had time for questions. So what I'll do now, I will stop sharing and go to the chat. So if anyone has questions, feel free to either raise your hand or put your question in the chat, and I will try to get to those as they come up. So if you have questions on kind of anything that I've discussed today or something completely different, feel free to ask. Well, maybe, okay. So do we have any on-site lab sessions for 8 teaching modules? Typically, we don't do on-site or extensive on-site lab sessions for the taught modules. And the reason for this is that we like to have all of the research training or the lab-based research training focused within the thesis project. And we find that the kind of little bits of maybe practicals or something that you would do for a module really aren't that in-depth, and the students end up learning more within the first week of their thesis project. So we don't do too much on-site lab sessions. We do a few kind of demonstrations where the students can come into the lab and see a technique or a piece of equipment, but there's not a lot of those. So most of the research training is focused on the thesis project. But good question. Any other questions? Okay, what's your personal favorite part of the course? Oh, that's a good question. Interesting as well. So I lead the biomaterials module in the second semester. And one of the main piece of assessment for that module is where the students write a research proposal. And so the students usually work in groups of 2 or 3 and come up with their own idea for a research proposal on the application of biomaterials in regenerative medicine. And I really enjoy that because I like seeing the creative ideas that students come up with. And I think the students quite enjoy it as well because they get to put a little bit more creativity into their assessment than in some of the other types of assessments. So that the research proposal is my personal favorite part of the course. I think that probably most of the students would say, though, that the thesis project and working in the labs is their favorite part, but I think they quite enjoy the research proposal as well. So are there any scholarships that help complete tuition fees within Queen Mary? So there are a couple scholarships available for international students, and the students who are accepted into the program are automatically considered for that. And so if they are awarded the scholarship, then that gets automatically applied. So you would, if you are considered for that, then you would receive notification about it. There is much more detailed information about scholarships available outside of the university on the Queen Mary webpage. So I think there's a section called How to Fund a Master's. Yes, David has posted the link. Great. So yeah, if you take a look at that link, there's a list of a whole bunch of different scholarships and people from different countries or backgrounds. And so I would recommend taking a look at those to see if any of them apply to you and whether you're eligible. Will we be able to attend any internships between first and the second semester? I don't think it's probably going to be possible because the first semester runs right up until kind of the Christmas break. And then there's about 2 weeks off. And then when the students come back in January, they've got exams for their semester 1 modules shortly thereafter. So that early part of January is spent usually revising for those exams. So there's not a lot of time in between the 2 semesters. So I would probably say that, yeah, internships are not, can't really fit within the scope of the master's. Of course, once you've completed your degree, I think there are probably a whole host of internships and other programs that could be, you could apply for getting additional research training or professional experience. I know one of our previous students went to work for a small startup company, a biotech company, and did a short internship there after completing the degree. So that's probably a more likely opportunity. But no, good questions. Okay. Is there any current research that you are a part of that you're particularly excited about? Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that my group has been working a lot on recently, and I'm quite excited about, is the use of 3D printing and bioprinting to create more advanced models of human tissues. And in my group in particular, we study the skin. So we're using 3D printing technology to deposit cells within biomaterials to try to create more complex tissues and structures. And things along that line are trying to create skin models that have a working vasculature and blood vessels, or that have immune cells within them that can respond to different stresses or inflammatory signals. So those are some areas that we're quite excited about, is using this technology and 3D bioprinting. So Shiva asks, what are the career options available after the MSc? So yes, it's a really good question. I think probably the most common is going on to a PhD, but that's not, of course, the only option. So many students who come to the course are looking to go on and do a PhD. and quite a large number of them do in fact go on and get PhD studentship positions. Some of those aren't always straight in. They might go and work for a little bit and then go on to their PhD, but that's probably one of the most common routes. Aside from that, there are a large number of other career options. So students can work directly within research, so in another university or in a company doing research. And this could be a small biotech or even a large pharmaceutical company. But aside from pure science and research careers, there are a pretty large number of other career options. So we've had students go into science publishing, technology transfer, secondary school education, and then we've also had a few that have gone back and done clinical training, either in medicine or dentistry. And I think we even had one go on to do a veterinary degree. So there's quite a large number of career options available. One thing to note is that we will do some career development workshops. So those typically take place in June, and those kind of highlight different career options for the students. We have a number of speakers that come in, and also a presentation from the careers office that can highlight some of the resources available within Queen Mary for developing your CV or searching for jobs or preparing for interviews. So we run that usually kind of in June, a few months before the students would be finishing the program, to kind of get them ready and thinking about next steps. Okay, great. Other questions? Will be accepted into a pharma biotech firm considering we are studying a different subject apart from them. It depends. So many pharma and biotech companies are using models of human tissues in vitro. And so that's a big area of research at the moment. And so the skills from regenerative medicine would be important for that. But more broadly speaking, I think many research institutions and companies are looking for students with solid scientific and critical thinking skills. And it's not quite so important, the specific topic that you studied, but having strong writing, communication, critical analysis, quantitative skills, those are all things that are desirable by employers, maybe more so than the subtle differences in subjects that you studied. But a lot of the skills and actual content of what's learned in this program would be relevant for biotech in terms of cell biology, genome engineering, that sort of thing. Good. Other questions? If you do think of something, after we close this session, feel free to email us. We're happy to answer those questions via email. So don't feel like you need to get them all your questions answered today. Okay, well, it looks like it's relatively quiet. One more question. Are there any cell therapy manufacturing units affiliated to the university? There aren't any cell therapy manufacturing units directly affiliated with Queen Mary. I think cell therapy is a very specialized area, and it requires very specialized manufacturing facilities with certain standards for health and safety and sterility and all of that. And the facilities within the university aren't really set up for that. We have had a few students go and work for cell banking and cell therapy companies, and that was one of the ones that I mentioned before that went and did an internship. So yeah, there aren't any manufacturing facilities affiliated with the university itself. There's a huge amount of research, but most of that is kind of basic science or translated elsewhere, but not within the university. Okay, it seems like that might be it for the questions. Right, so David just has one final message about thank you for attending and information about the recording that will be available. And yeah, again, we're happy to answer questions via email as and when they come up. Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for logging in today. Some really good questions, and glad to see the interest. So hopefully you found it informative as well, and perhaps we'll see some of you in the autumn.